First of all, hi to all of you who are currently watching these videos, and thank you for being with us and being part of these Gestalt people in OD videos that we have been running for the past few months. Today, we're really honored to have Marianne Rainey as our guest speaker. Marianne, welcome, and thank you for accepting our request for you to be a guest on our videos that Angelica and myself are doing as part of the ODNE Europe network.
It's an honor to have been invited and to be here. I'm excited about how we're going to spend this time.
The excitement is on both sides. Angelica, hi to you too, because I haven't seen you in a few days. I'm first going to start with a short introduction of you, Marianne, for those of you who are maybe less familiar with who you are and do not know everything about your rich background. So as I finish, if you want to add something or if you feel that I have missed something, please feel free to add on. Marianne Rainey, you have specialized in the application of holistic perspectives to improve organizational and leadership effectiveness. For more than 25 years, you have cultivated a global client base spanning a range of sectors. You are the co-founder and co-chairperson of the International Gestalt Organization and Leadership Development, or better known as iGOLD program, which focuses on 4 primary theory and practice areas. Those are Gestalt, OD, leadership, and diversity, inclusion, and social justice. For nearly 10 years, you have been faculty in the Strategic Agility and Innovation program, sponsored by the Yale University School of Management and Yale New Haven Hospital. You were adjunct professor in the Executive MBA program at Loyola University, Chicago, Illinois, and you have been program dean of the NTL Institute's Global Organizational Development Certificate program in Oxford, England, and taught in the NTL OD programs, not just in the States, but also in India, Japan, and Singapore. Other teaching experiences includes Cleveland State University, Case Western Reserve University, and Benedictine University. You have also been board leadership experience that includes vice city manager and vice president of organizational effectiveness for Exelon Corporation, where you were responsible for OD diversity, ethics, and quality improvement. And this is not all. Your book, Gestalt Practice, Living and Working in Pursuit of Holism, was published in 2019 by Libri Publication. Other writings cover experiential learning theory, leadership, personal presence, and appreciative inquiry. You are regarded as a pioneer in the application of appreciative theory as a change methodology. And we have something more to add on this. Your professional affiliations include Academy of Management Association, Organizational Development Network, and NTL Institute of Applied Behavioral Sciences. And now you and your husband, Elias, together with your 2 sons, are living in Chicago. So if I have missed something, this is really rich resume that you have. Would you like to add something or say something more about what I have just shared with our audience?
Well, I would just like to say my 2 sons don't reside with us. One lives in California and the other one in Michigan. So I probably miswrote that. But everything else is fine. There's always something so humbling about hearing yourself. Even though I know I wrote it, there's something that really says, ooh, my goodness, is that too much? But you did a great job. Thank you.
Well, when you have a rich resume, it's always nice to hear what you have been doing. And I believe it's a nice support for all of us that are working in Gestalt and OD to just remind ourselves that investment in personal development is a key aspect in how we do our practice.
Yes.
So once again, welcome. And we're going to start with the first interview questions. And from what I have shared in the interview, what becomes obvious is that you have really extensive experience in OD world, holding different positions, highly involved in the OD academia, seen by the book that you have published and all the other writings, as well as business schools. So I'm just curious, how did you actually end up into the Gestalt world? What was the reason that you started swimming in Gestalt waters?
It's always so interesting because I believe Gestalt found me, which is true for most of us, many of us in our lives. A profession finds us. I grew up wanting to be a professor at university, or an actress, because I had a stage mother who would take me around to perform in plays and recite poetry. However, when I went to university, I was directed by my school to go into math and physics. And I went initially in math and physics and took a course in business management because I moved away from math to accounting and did not want to do solely an accounting degree. So therefore I went into management. In that management course, I had to interview as part of an internship one of the directors of our university facilities, the gentleman who was responsible for hiring, and I liked it. Even though I liked it, I went on to do my master's, to begin a master's degree in MBA in accounting. And when I was doing that work, I had the opportunity to apply for a fellowship that would be what we call a full ride, a full pay for my master's degree. And the committee that awarded that fellowship to me said, of course, finish your MBA in accounting. However, we would like you to consider psychology. And I said to myself, if they're going to pay for it, I'll do what they are asking or requesting. I'll always get my MBA in accounting. Of course, I never did get that MBA in accounting because I began studying theories of psychotherapy, which was my first introduction to Gestalt. However, at that time, Gestalt, as you know, the body of research and theory was not robust. Mm-hmm. We did not spend much time on Gestalt. However, when I later applied for a doctoral program at Case Western Reserve University, the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland was right on the campus. And I began my introduction to Gestalt there when I was in Cleveland. And I just fell in love with it.
Really interesting story. And to be honest, I'm intrigued now of the change, how you went from someone who started with maths and physics, then continues in psychology, and how actually everything fall into place, I guess.
Everything did fall into place because I do believe the structured way of learning that I use in my work. For instance, when I enrolled in the Gestalt Organization and Systems Development Program, which was my first introduction to Gestalt OD, I didn't quite understand everything that they taught. Therefore, I wrote an article, What is Gestalt OSD? To help structure it in my mind. So the cognitive part of me is still here. The structured part of me is still here.
Mm. And I think it's the beauty of your writings, because it's different. Of course, every author has different styles, but your articles are very structured and easy to follow. Although you speak about Gestalt, it has a structure to it. Mm. And that's one of the things I liked a lot about it. And to go on the second question, you edited a book together with Brenda Jones called yes. Gestalt Practice, yes. Living and Working in Pursuit of Holism, yes. Published in 2019?
Yes.
What drove you to edit the book in the first place?
I know the two of you have said you were not aware that I had published that book with Brenda, and that you might not have it by the time we do this interview. It began with Brenda and I were attending a conference. I'm trying to think of how many years ago, but it's in our introduction. We were at an NTL conference in the United States, and it was about sort of new trends or trends in OD. And one of the things that we were hearing a great deal about at that time was large group interventions, dialogic OD, you've heard of those.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And many of the things that were being said about where we were going sounded to Brenda and me and other Gestalt practitioners there. That's Gestalt, we would say. Oh, so bringing together the whole institute or the whole enterprise or the whole system, that's what Gestalt is about. Emphasizing the practitioner's development and self-awareness. And we would say, yes, that's use of self and presence. Thinking systemically. And we said, yes, not only do we think systemically, we know how to intervene systemically. And we realize that Gestalt really has contributed a great deal to the field of OD, even as we say we're moving into a different era. And we also acknowledge that we had not in Gestalt done enough to present ourselves to new audiences. We had not done anything to update research and theory, and we decided to write a book and really believe that the best way to write the book would be as an edited book where we could demonstrate the wide range of applicability of Gestalt theory and practice.
Go on.
Sorry, Francina. I was laughing because when I was hearing it, it's exactly the reaction Francina and I have had on many conferences and seeing many OD practitioners to draw parallel with Gestalt. And the book will arrive this weekend. That's coming, so we will be reading it next week. But I think it's a really important work for the world of Gestalt, and you are in a really good position to talk to both worlds because you work also in the NTL, so you know both worlds, the Gestalt world and the NTL one.
Yes.
Francina?
What I was aiming to say is that it's interesting how, as you were describing about how the book came up, this for me somehow relates to how we actually started this series of videos in order to bring and to show the differences in how each one of us as practitioners practice Gestalt. Mm-hmm. And we sometimes might be using different terms and concepts to explain the same phenomena. Yet I guess this brings for me, the beauty and the creativity that we can work with when we're entering in all the fields. And that's the richness of what Gestalt can contribute and how it can relate to different theories and different concepts, even though they are not named under the name of Gestalt. And
yes.
And on that note, I was reading this week the article that you have sent. That's also part of one of the chapters in the book. And I have no idea whether I'm going to pronounce it correctly. In Macedonian, this is going to be pronounced as Frogi model. I don't know how it is pronounced in English, but I would really invite you to just give an overview for us of how the Frogi model was created and say a bit more about it. For those who are really curious, I would highly advise them to read it completely as a chapter of the book, because it gives it gave a really nice explanation and a new perspective on how everything can be compiled in one model that really works.
I want to start by thanking you, of course, for your comments, your compliments about the article. The whole idea of the Froggy model, 4 roles of the Gestalt intervener. And I like using acronyms most of the time. I know that if they are US based or more culturally based, they can be distracting. However, I believe in the power of both figure and ground. And Froggy, the acronym, is a figure. And I'll share with you the ground of the context of the model. I have a slide. I grew sort of a tree, and I'll send that to you. And the tree itself describes the origins of Gestalt from learning theory. Gestalt started as a learning theory, and it suggested this learning theory that students look at elements of a situation holistically rather than looking at them as elements or parts, that there's something about seeing beyond the elements or the ingredients that's very different from, not better than, but different and distinct from seeing the elements. In fact, when Gestalt moved from a learning theory to a theory of perception at the Berlin School in the first 25 years of the 20th century, those who were doing research there, Wertheimer, Kafka, and Kohler, really learned that humans, when it comes to perception, that we have a tendency and a need to see things in their fullness, completeness, a wholeness. So it started as a learning theory, moved to a theory of perception. And while they were doing the research at the Berlin School, Kurt Lewin, or Kurt Lewin, however you want to pronounce it, was there testing his theories of psychodynamics. And Fritz Perls and Laura Perls were there. Laura Perls was much more a Gestalt practitioner, whereas Fritz Perls was coming out of the Freudian school of thought and wanted, as you know, to develop his own theory. However, he was being influenced because he was there for a time, not over a sustained period as Laura Perls and Kurt Lewin, but he was there, and because he was in that environment, he began to appreciate some of the aspects, even as Fritz Perls, was developing his own theory of psychotherapy. Therefore, I have it in my head that from learning theory to theory of perception, we go two ways. One with Kurt Lewin in terms of the theory, very credible theory that we still have, and Gestalt therapy, very, very credible intervention practice that we have. And in our iGOLD program, we have brought those two together to bring this Gestalt foundation, even without much updated research and theory. We find that Kurt Lewin's work still holds its own. It's solid, it's robust. And the practice theory from the Perls and their colleagues still hold. That's what the iGOLD program is about. The Froggy model takes from both of these, especially from Lewin and learning, and from the Perlses and their colleagues around application and practice, into the Froggy model. In our iGOLD program, we believe that the foundation of intervening from a Gestalt perspective is having these 4 ways of showing up with one's presence. And the Froggy model outlines 4 ways of intervening. 1 is to experience. The other is to notice the experience. The third is to make meaning out of the experience. And the 4th is to take action, influence based on the meaning you make of that experience. And once you have intervened or taken action, you go right back into experiencing. It's holistic in that it goes experience first, then I step back, I notice the experience, I step further back, I make meaning, I come up with some grand theory, and then I use that grand theory to guide how I want to impact the system. And once I take action in terms of influence the system, I get right back in awareness. What am I experiencing now? So it's continuous, it's holistic, it's theoretically sound because it's based on experiential learning theory, and it works for us. It's the centerpiece of the iGOLD program. So I'll stop there and let you react.
I'm just enjoying it very much because it's such a different perspective from Europe School of Thought, which we have been educated into.
What is the European School of Thought? Before I interrupted you, but tell me when you're finished, what is that school of thought, of way of intervening?
Probably it has all the points you're saying, but not in that order. It would be different. For instance, we use quite a lot of whole intelligence, the 5 explorations, whenever going into organizations. So it's a different prism. It's the same story, but a different prism. Mm-hmm. And I really, really appreciate how you brought the history, and you got me really interested in the iGOLD program and the people that go out of it, because although it's different schools, and that was, as Christina said, our intention for those videos, we're all Gestalt practitioners, but we all come with a bit different set of tools when working. And it's really good to hear, very refreshing.
I was about to follow the same that Angelica said, because as I was reading the example that you gave in the chapter about the OD intervention on the practitioner and how they were following the 4 ways of knowing and different roles that were taking from different exploration, it invited me to not compare them, but to reflect on how, for example, we practice whole intelligence when we go in organizations, and how these different ways of knowing are similar, but they have different conceptualization or are differently named. And it's, for me, the beauty is into the dance that we place and in how we use ourselves as instruments, which I guess I mentioned in the beginning, the need of constant learning, self-exploring, self-recognizing, learning how we emerge into the organizations, what we provoke, how people respond to us. And all this data is really useful and valuable when it comes to how then we're planning the intervention, or how we respond to a particular situation, or how we provoke, where we evoke particular reactions in those who are our clients.
You're talking about 2 things that get my attention, Frosina. Mm-hmm. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, correctly.
And one is knowing. The 4 roles of the Gestalt intervening really are an overlay of experiential learning theory by Dave Kolb. Dave says that to learn, we first experience, then we reflect on the experience, we we create abstract concepts, and then we really take some action, or we experiment. And I love the language, because as the 2 of you know, experimentation is a big part of Gestalt. Mm-hmm. And because Dave Kolb was my mentor and teacher when I was in my Ph.D. program, and I still work with Dave. He's in Hawaii now, and he's helping me with this next book I'm writing on leadership, leading in a learning way. So we were, the model, the 4 roles of the intervention of the Gestalt intervener came to our international Gestalt program years ago by Claire Stratford. And she just had seen a student from Case Western Reserve University, where David Kolb was the chairperson. And she says, I like these 4 ways of intervening. She didn't know at the time that it was based on David Kolb's experiential learning model. And once I began teaching in the international program, I moved from the US-based program to the international program. We just really refined it into the 4 roles of the Gestalt intervener. But if you think first of David Kolb's model, and you can look that up, experience and then reflection, abstraction in terms of concepts, and experimentation, I like it again as a holistic model because it allows for at least 4 ways of knowing. Experience is in the moment, here and now, sensorial. What am I experiencing? And that part is for the intervener and their learning cycle. Then after the intervener checks herself or himself or themselves, they move to noticing. They can continue with their own learning. I experience, I notice what I'm reflecting on what I did. I have a theory about why I'm behaving this way, and then influence themselves. I think I want to change. But as an intervener, because we work with others, we first get in touch with our experience, hold in the background the rest of our learning cycle, and focus on the other, which is once I'm grounded in my own experience, what am I noticing about the other? What I'm noticing about the other is the art of pattern recognition. What am I noticing? What are the themes that are coming up? And given those themes, what grand theory might I make that, for instance, Procina and Angelica have been doing these videos. That's a pattern I'm hearing about. There's a theme here. My grand theory is that those who love Gestalt want to advance Gestalt in the world. And my grand theory, it could very well be, I could take that and do videos myself. I might even want to experiment with what you're doing. And once I experiment with that, then I step back, and when I do that, I'm in touch with what's going on with me. So the 4 roles allows in the moment concrete experience. Noticing is stepping back, and reflection, which is a different way of learning. Abstract conceptualization really supports meaning making and grand theorizing. It's much more rational in its origin. And experimentation is about doing. So it allows us to bring our whole selves to our work, and I like it. It's diversity. It's a form of diversity. So who said whom?
It's me. I'm just enjoying what you're saying, and just to add on, for the European School of Thought, of course, they came from America. Parlett did his education, Dr. Parlett, in Gestalt in the US, but brought it and changed it as he was working. And on this note, I think we can enter question 4. Gestalt is often criticized for its lack of scientific backing. However, in recent years, we did see a surge in academic articles being written about Gestalt approach in OD. And we can see it in conferences as well. You have contributed to the field with numerous articles. One that left me with a lot of reflection was the use of self as an OD practitioner. There are a lot of references as the origin of the concept of self. And I was really, really not surprised, but it was a pleasure to read the references and the background in the article. As well as an interesting mode, the what and how of OD, action research and use of self. Could you tell us something more about this?
About use of self and present?
Yeah.
In the book, you're going to find a wonderful article by Mayan Chung Judge that I invited her. Brenda and I invited Mayan to contribute to the book because she loves theory. She does research and she develops theory. And she also is very good at unearthing sort of the beginnings and origins of things. So you'll love that article. I fell in love with the whole idea of use of self in my program in Cleveland. And it was the late Edwin Nevis who first taught me about the importance of presence in OD work. And it comes from, he would tell us, it came from his teachings, the teachings he received from Fritz Perls himself when Fritz would come to Cleveland. And because Gestalt is deeply rooted in psychotherapy, as I said, on the practitioner side, and Lewin on the theoretical and research side, we know that psychotherapists are very mindful about how they show up. Now, of course, Sigmund Freud would say the psychotherapist's presence is not that important. And it was demonstrated when he would actually sit behind his patients as if they were not in the same energy field. But one of the things that Fritz Perls really pushed against when he decided to develop his own theory was saying that we are there in the same energy field. And so why not acknowledge that and be mindful of that? Of course, Fritz Perls was extreme. He developed his own way of meeting people, meeting his clients at the contact boundary. But use of self is a first step in becoming a good practitioner. And we emphasize it in Gestalt. It is being mindful of who you are, getting to know who you are, self-aware. I have a sort of a 2x2 that the first step in learning about self is self-awareness. The second one is self-concept. The third one is self-esteem. And the fourth one is the social self, because we do live in a world with others and an environment. Self-awareness, as I said, is about my biases, what triggers me, what might seduce me, what gets in my way, what are my strengths, what are my developmental edges. Self-concept, and it's connected to self-awareness, has to do with, given my awareness of myself, if I had to describe myself, what would I say? I often ask leaders and practitioners who I'm working with on self, learning about self, if you could come up with 3 words to describe who you are, what would those 3 words be? That gives you an idea about your self-concept. Who am I to me? So once you have your self-awareness, I know I'm getting to know who I am. Given who I am, how do I put myself together? If I looked at myself and said, this is who I am, what would be the outcome? The third is, given my self-concept, how do I feel about myself? My self-esteem. On a given day, do I feel good about myself? Is my elevator up? On a bad day, am I feeling bad or somewhere in between? Often self-esteem is a comparison of ourselves with others. So if I'm in the presence of someone who's highly regarded or who I regard highly, what does that do to my self-esteem, my feelings, my good or bad feelings about myself? So self-esteem is important in learning about self. And the fourth, because we live in a world with others, is my social self. And we as practitioners do our work with others, whether it's coaching, conflict resolution, supervision, working with groups or teams or large enterprises. Getting to know your comfort level. Do I like working with large groups? Do I prefer working with the whole system? Do I like supervision and coaching, which will take me more to what we call intimate social structures? But learning about self is the first step in presence. And then once you learn that, being intentional about how you want to show up, which is your presence.
Thanks for that really good description of use of self as instrument. And again, it's different words than we're used to. The same thing, but different words, and it's really refreshing to hear them.
Well, the presence, I didn't speak much about presence because my colleague, John O'Hanafin, who co-authored the article, we talk about presence in a number of ways. I don't know if you're interested in that. Do you want me to share a bit about that?
Yes, please.
Please do.
We talk about presence as it was taught to us by Edwin Nevis. And Edwin always talked about you can choose to be evocative, or you can choose to be provocative in terms of your presence. Evoke, I've heard one of you, was it you?
It was
Rosina?
Me. Yes,
Yeah. We evoke from others, we pull from others what's going on with them. Provocative, on the other hand, is that we sort of want to impact the boundary of contact where we provoke others. And Edwin would tell us, decide where you want to be in any given situation, whether you're going to be on the end of provocative, having it come from the other, or if you want it to be provocative, where it comes from you or anyone, anywhere between. He was the first one to give me the idea of having a range of presence, and that presence is situational. Then I took from Peter Hawkins the idea that presence can be thought of in terms of time, that we can have presence that's past presence, we can have presence that's present presence, and we can have presence that's future present. And I see you, Angelica, are already musing on that. He would say, past presence is my resume. Past presence is my reputation, my education, what I've done, how I'm regarded. That precedes my present presence, which is my presence in the here and now. Once I'm with you, that's a different, he distinguishes present moment presence from past presence that precedes us. He then says, as a result of what we do in the present moment will impact our future presence. Will we change paradigms? Will we suggest something that shifts the system or causes an executive to pause, cause leaders to pause? And when we do that, he has the idea, he is of the thinking that we will be called back. That's my husband. You're going to have to edit his coming through the door out. Mm-hmm. He says that future presence is even when we're absent, someone will think, oh, Angelica said that to me, or Rosina said that to me. You have future presence when in your absence, you come to mind for someone. Hmm. And then there's the presence that John O'Hanafin speaks about, my esteemed colleague. He calls it, be mindful of your perceived weirdness index. That is, think about the context of your work, the individual with whom you're working, the group, the enterprise, the nature of the culture, and decide what your presence is going to be. How are you going to show up? For instance, for a group of engineers, without stereotyping, my guess is that they're probably more rational. So I'm thinking if I'm going in with, quote, a lot of touchy-feely, that may not be my entry presence. I may want to get to that, but I'm mindful of my entry presence. If I go into a fast-paced culture that's moving all the time, doing, I may want to decide, do I want to go in fast-paced presence, or do I want to go in with a slower paced presence to model what Edwin Nevis taught? You teach the model by providing what's missing. So if I go into a fast-paced culture at a slower pace, I'm modeling slowing down. I'm teaching through my presence. And that's what I love about the concept of presence. I always take, those of us in iGOLD, always take our participants beyond use of self to presence.
Yeah, thank you again for this, and I'll be researching it. That it makes total sense.
Especially for me, what resonates is the perceived weirdness index, and how important it is for us as practitioners to be aware of how we emerge into a particular context, starting from the dress code, then from the language that we speak. And I connect this to my recent event that I had. I was working previously in a hospital industry. Now I'm in a completely different industry. And I can see the change that I needed to do as someone who joins new industry when it comes to how I present myself, how I emerge into the space, and how I needed to change what you said, the pace in which I'm going to be introducing the changes or supporting the changes that the company was aiming to have as such. And I'm going to pause here so that I can go back to what I have shared in your CV on the beginning, on the resume when I was introducing you. And the question I have is, how relevant do you find the Gestalt approach when it comes to working with the diversity, inclusion, and equality work? Because this is something that we have mentioned in the beginning that you're working with, and that this is one of the 4 areas in which the iGOLD is somehow embedded. So if you can give us an answer of whether Gestalt is applicable for this and this kind of work, and how do you use it when you work with diversity, inclusion, and equality?
I believe we in Gestalt are fortunate when it comes to diversity, because holism by its nature is inclusive. That's where I began. That Gestalt, loosely translated, we know that it means whole configuration. And I always say, we must do our work in a way that enacts our belief, our value of holism. It is our ability, though, to execute on holism when it comes to diversity. And one of the things that we have in Gestalt that I believe gives us an edge is that we know how to work with emerging dynamics. Right now in our world, I say it's the coming together of COVID-19, and then you have also the Black Lives Matter that is in the United States. However, if we all get in touch with colonialism, we'll see the connection with other parts of the world. So it's COVID, Black Lives Matter, and the hashtag Me Too movement, all coming together. And what Gestalt, I would say, what is happening is that we have all of this change that is emerging, and our clients don't quite know what to do with it. And when it comes to diversity, I will acknowledge the fact that we need to look at the visual part of diversity, who's in the room, the things that catch our eye right away? Is it diverse? Do we have a palette of cultures, of genders, of ability, of generations? And most of the time, we know that we don't. We need to work on who's at the table, who's in conversation, but we must not wait for that. We can begin doing diversity work right now if we use our skills as Gestalt practitioners. I did a video for the Singapore Civil Service College a few years ago, and in that video, I talked about what to attend to when we're working with groups. The easiest thing that we can do, and it relates to diversity in the here and now, I'm talking about while we're getting the numbers and the visual, the optics that we want, we can do something right away as Gestalt practitioners. We can attend to communication, who talks to whom, who follows whom, who's excluded, whose ideas are embraced, whose ideas are not considered. We can begin doing the work right now because diversity, while it has the quantitative dimension, it has much more the qualitative dimension. Belonging and lack of feeling belonging, am I saying that right? Has to do with a feeling state. Belonging is sort of part of the new language of diversity. We have ally, we have belonging, we have all of the new language of diversity. But one of the things I know about having or holding a sense of belonging is that it is a feeling state. And Gestalt practitioners know how to work with feelings. Therefore, I think while we wait to get the optics that we want, we can begin helping our clients attend to the conversations that they're having, to the meetings that they're having. We can begin teaching them how to do what we do, which is in essence what Ed Nevis taught me. Teach diversity using your skills as a Gestalt practitioner. And I do it, and I teach leaders, begin to notice who dominates the conversation. And if you see a pattern, then you need to speak to that pattern using your power, the power of your role. So I think that this is an opportune time for Gestalt to step in. If we truly believe in holism, we need to not wait for the numbers, even though we need them. I'm repeating myself, but begin teaching organizations how to have good conversations, how to deal with conflict, how to deal with power and politics, how to do all the things that we know how to do.
It's an excellent call, and just in line with the message we've been trying to pass through all videos. We do have the skills, and we need to use them. Mm-hmm. And you gave real good examples of how we could use them.
In fact, research indicates when it comes to sexual harassment, and sexual harassment is it's a subset and related to diversity, is that if we begin to create respectful cultures where everyone is respectful and we minimize unwelcome behavior, it is an immediate intervention that will begin to shift the climate of an organization in service of shifting the culture. And I always distinguish climate from culture. Climate is the day-to-day weather forecast. Oh, I had a bad day at work today. Oh, it was a good day at work today. It was an okay day. That is my immediate experience of being in a social system. If we can help people have better experiences by being just simply respectful. Research says it is directly related to diminishing sexual harassment, and it also contributes to a sense of belonging. I don't have to be subjected or witness to unwelcome behavior. Then I can say it was a good day at work. And the more we say there was a good day of work, the climate every day is getting better, then the culture gets better. That's a different way of changing culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And unfortunately, we're at the end of the interview.
Yes.
Could you tell us an anecdote, a story of working in an organization with a Gestalt approach?
It's so much a part of who I am. It is so interesting that when I go in, and I'm working primarily with leaders, I go in, I don't use Gestalt. I don't say, I'm working from Gestalt, but I begin, I'm working with a new leader. And one of the things that I do is I look at my work with the leader holistically, Gestalt, by first asking, what do you want your legacy to be when you leave this role? So I don't start with the beginning. I start with the end, looking at the whole life tenure of a leader. And I say, tell me what you want to hear. What do you want people to say about your presence, which is the Gestalt term that they don't know. And I would say, let's let that be the beginning of where we start. I also use, and I teach them, I've been teaching lately how leaders can begin working on diversity just using the example I gave, while they get the numbers up. Change the qualitative. I say, we can do some things immediately. I don't know if the two of you have the experience. I'm getting so many calls about diversity work. I'm not a diversity practitioner, but I use Gestalt. So you can get some early wins if you begin to notice. And I said, I want you to become self-aware and notice yourself. Then I want you to notice what's happening in the room. And I want you to make some theories about what you're noticing, and then make some choices to use your courage to intervene. So I teach them the 4 rows of the Froggy model without their knowing. And I tell them that experiencing their virtues that go along with that, if you are noticing them, it is the virtue of wisdom. What are you picking up? If you are grand theorizing, you're trying to be judicious. Justice is your virtue. If you're intervening to make a difference, you're using courage because you want to make a difference with your presence. And I say, if you're experiencing, you're coming with the virtue of love.
Thank you for sharing this anecdote, and it fully resonates with me in how sometimes it's difficult for us as Gestalt practitioners to explain Gestalt, and how bringing the concept without naming them as Gestalt can actually be really helpful and can enable us the space and the freedom to experiment and to be and co-create together with our clients, whoever the clients are in the moment. So that's something that's really meaningful for me. And I guess when Angelica and myself started these videos, one of the reasons was to actually explore how different Gestalt practitioners use Gestalt in OD without actually naming it as a Gestalt, but bringing it with all its beauty into the context.
I will tell you quickly, of course, we have the cycle of experience. I don't know if you call it the cycle of learning, and we do units of work. We haven't talked about that. But a quick story. My mom one day came home from work and she said to me, she used to call me Prissy. Prissy, there were some people at my job today, who were interviewing us about our level of satisfaction, if we felt we were being heard, the working conditions, and if we had suggestions. And I told those two gentlemen that I said to them, you do what my daughter does. And I never knew my mother knew what I was doing. And that I was thinking, it was such a gift to me from my mom to know that she knew what I was, the work that I do without my having to tell her, because I thought, first of all, I was thinking, I can barely explain it to my clients. I would never try to explain it to my mom, but she knew the work that I did. So that's the anecdote.
It's an excellent one, and thank you for sharing it.
Thanks. We're always surprised to see how our moms make sense of what we do.
I know, isn't it? And then it also gave me greater appreciation and love for her.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for your time today. It was a real pleasure having you.
I'm honored. I really am. Thank you for inviting me. And if you need something from me, a slide or whatever, I can give it to you. But this was just great. I hope you can make use of it, and I hope others will enjoy it.
I truly believe that everyone that listens to this interview will be enjoying. And as Angelica and myself, we're encouraged to read your articles and to get familiar with the new old book, because it was released in 2019. People will go and look for it if they haven't read it still. I would highly encourage them, because there is a really nice material from what I have read, and I think it can highly contribute to the practice that we do. So thank you once again for being our guest in this video, and we're going to wish you a pleasant stay in the day. I guess for you the day now begins. Here in Macedonia it's almost evening, so we're in different time zones.
Have a good evening. And again, thank you for your support and your recognition. I really appreciate it.
Thank you to you.